Hello, and welcome to today's ICMI webinar. We're very glad you've joined us for the Evolving Contact Center, Customer Service Insights and Predictions. I'm Tim McElligott. I'm the Editorial Manager and Principal Analyst at ICMI, and I'll be your host for today's session. A few housekeeping announcements before we get started. If you have any technical difficulties during the session, simply hit F5 or Command R to refresh your browser window. If you need further assistance, please click on the yellow help icon below the slides, and somebody will get right with you. We encourage you to ask questions at any time during the discussion. To do that, just type your questions in the Q&A window on the side of your screen and hit the submit button. We will answer as many questions as we have time for, but we may go a little bit long with some fascinating answers to some smart questions. So if we are unable to answer all your questions today, we will try to get back to you with responses after the session. Additional resources related to this discussion can be found in the resource list widget located in your console. Feel free to check those out, download them, and share them with your colleagues. Today's presentation will be available on demand shortly after the completion of live event. You'll receive an email reminder once that is available. Finally, thank you very much to 8x8 for sponsoring today's discussion. With that, let's take a moment and meet today's panelists. David Myron is the Principal Analyst covering Contact Center Technologies for Omdia, a leading industry research and analysis firm and an ICMI corporate sibling. As part of Omdia's enterprise IT team, David focuses on contact center infrastructure, workforce optimization, interactive voice response, and speech analytics solutions. He provides insights into these topics for vendor and enterprise clients through research, consulting, white papers, webinars, and blogs. David's covered the contact center industry since 2001 as a journalist, editor, and analyst. Welcome, David.
Thank you for having me.
Patrick Russell joins us from 8x8, where he directs product management. Patrick has a passion for finding, deploying, and using technology to make contact centers efficient and effective while keeping customers happy. With 20 years of experience leading contact center teams and guiding technology strategy, Patrick has developed a deep understanding of what works and what doesn't, with his current focus on workforce engagement technology and how it can be used to improve both agent and customer experiences. We're very much looking forward to your insights, Patrick. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks, Tim.
And finally, Jessica Smith is an experienced and dedicated communicator. She shares her passion for creating great customer experiences. She's now a senior product marketing manager at 8x8. She's worked since 2012 in product marketing, competitive intelligence, sales, and channel sales and channel enablement. We will get through the the fumble tongue in a moment. She strives to continually improve customer and employee experience improvement by providing thought leadership, acting as a champion for experiential learning, and promoting new ideas that drive the evolution of CX and EX. Welcome, David, Patrick, and Jessica.
Thanks, Tim.
All righty, let's go ahead and start our look into the future of the contact center by looking back over the past few years. I'm going to start with David, then move to Patrick, and end with Jessica on this one. David, can you share a short list of the most significant changes and challenges that have emerged as we all adapted to the massive disruptions that have been created by the various crises over the last few years?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for inviting me in for the question. Well, there's no doubt that the pandemic created a new normal for contact centers. Due to government work-from-home mandates in the first half of 2020, Omdia estimated around that time that about 75% of contact center agents were forced to work from home. And this prompted significant investments in the cloud to help get those agents set up very quickly. And these solutions help them do that in a matter of days for most companies. Planned investments in 2022 for various cloud-based customer service solutions are up since 2019, prior to the pandemic. According to our soon-to-be released Contact Center as a Service forecast report, the CCaaS market grew by a little over 40% year over year in 2021, which is pretty impressive growth. According to Omdia's 2022 IT Insights Enterprise Insights Survey, nearly two-thirds, about 65% of organizations, are expecting to either make a strategic or minor investment in a workforce optimization solution this year. So a lot of attention on on the cloud and cloud investments. Now, I want to also take a look at how the pandemic has affected the customers as well, because that necessitated an additional response by organizations. So when people were forced to work from home, isolate as a result of the work from home mandates, they needed to stay connected with family, friends, and colleagues, and this became such a high priority for them that the internet became a much bigger part of their lives. They looked to things like social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, saw increased usage. We saw the sudden rise of applications like TikTok and Twitch and Zoom for video interactions. We also saw the emergence of WhatsApp and more communications on SMS. E-commerce also surged. There was a stat about Amazon during the pandemic. Amazon saw more than 200% increase in profit due to online shopping. And for any of you who have school-age children, you might also be familiar with Google Classroom. If they had to work from home, they started using technology as well to communicate with their teachers and their students. And they used something called Google Classroom, where students would receive assignments, share their work, get feedback from their teachers. Students and teachers used an application called Class Dojo for messaging and photos, and Zoom was used for video meetings. Just as a personal example, 2 years ago, my daughter started using these tools in 3rd grade, and my son started using them in 1st grade. So the pandemic had a significant impact on the way people, adults and children, communicate with each other. The more people used these digital solutions, the more comfortable they became with them, and the more they desired them. This raised the level of technological sophistication, and as a result, they expected the companies that they do business with to be as sophisticated as they are, prompting what Amdia is calling the digital-first customer expectations. Now, this required companies to pay attention. Their ears sort of perked up when they saw this behavioral change. And it required them to respond by investing in digital self-service, investing more. It's not like they hadn't already invested in digital self-service and omnichannel, but they had to invest more and get better at digital self-service and omnichannel investments. Another area that I just wanted to, and I'll just close this out with one final thought that I thought is really interesting, and it's so interesting to me because of my background in speech technology and CRM and customer engagement. For the longest time, voice struggled to be as effective of an interaction channel as many of the digital channels. With digital, you can capture and track all of your interactions. With voice, it became very challenging because you were relying on an agent to take really copious notes and enter all the information without any errors. So now many organizations are investing in automated call recording and transcription services. Once these calls are recorded, transcribed, and digitally stored, they become searchable. And like any other digital data, they can unearth hidden gems of information. Additionally, some companies are investing in real-time transcription for things like sentiment analysis and agent assist. So by bringing voice calls into the digital world, it really enables voice to join the digital revolution. So that's my list.
Yeah, no, those are what that highlights is just the massive change that's happened and continues to evolve. And a thought, we're not going to go down too deep into this today, but all of that voice data now, the trick is how do we avoid letting that become dark data, right? So how do we actually derive the value that's resident in all of that data that we're capturing? Patrick, can you give us sort of your view from the 10,000-foot view of sort of how we got to where we are right now?
Yeah, I mean, I'm only going to focus on one area of significant change, going back to 2017 or 18 and carrying forward to today. And I think it will be from an important part of how we evolve over the next 7 years. And it's really, and David touched on it briefly, but it's really about the rise of customer to business SMS or text messaging communication. I think that we've seen adoption continue to rise slowly, and now it's starting to shoot up. I feel that the impact of the pandemic and the worker shortage that our industry is clearly facing is going to continue to push businesses to encourage this behavior, encourage customers to communicate through SMS. By nature of SMS being an asynchronous communication, it allows the business to deflect their labor requirements in a different way and reduce their total labor requirements as a whole. So as it's harder to hire folks, businesses, I believe, are going to look for ways to combat the need to bring back as many or to hire as many as they may have in the past. And I think the rise of SMS, the push for businesses to push the voice interactions to an SMS interaction, I think those are two big parts of it. And you see SMS, or I should just say messaging services, to include WhatsApp and so on. They're going to start eating old parts of the contact center tech stack. Dialer is the first one that comes to mind. The voice dialer is dying. Both regulation and preference and business models and so forth are killing off the need and validity of having a really powerful dialer. But if you had a outbound SMS or messaging capability with a campaign kind of component, that's the new version of a dialer. And it's, by the way more effective than a voice dialer. So I think that change that we've seen is going to continue to accelerate and possibly rapidly accelerate. And I'll talk more about it a little later, but I think that's one of the most significant, most impactful changes we've seen over the last 5 years.
Yeah, that's great. And I've got just very recent experience on kind of both sides of that. Had a hailstorm here. I'm getting my roof replaced. I had one voice conversation with the contractor. Everything since has been back and forth on SMS, right? That's one example. The other example is I worked for a company a long time ago, and I have a small pension with them. And I used to get paper from them, and now, of course, everything's electronic. So I went to sign in just so I could keep an eye on this thing. And they said, well, give us your phone number and we'll ship you over a code and then you can log in. It's been 3 days now. And I still haven't received that code. So highlights both the utility of this stuff and also the very important focus that the companies need to have on making sure that this works correctly. Jessica, what are you thinking about these days in terms of how we got here? And what's
Sure.
What really needs to be addressed?
Yeah, so I want to talk about two things, and Patrick and David, just to kind of summarize a little bit of what you just said, which I think is important to kind of capture on, is that the pandemic kind of catapulted customers to almost be forced into some of these new preferences around digital. And I think that while we were kind of seeing this trickle towards digital channels as far as being a preference, all of a sudden, when we were all in a remote setting and we're forced to interact with businesses, whether it be online or, through the contact center, all of a sudden we did start to realize channel preference, enjoying being able to self-serve, whether that be through the voice channel or digital channels. And so as we were, again, kind of catapulted into this place of realizing some of our own preferences, I think that where we're at now is businesses are trying to figure out how to optimize some of those different channels and really make it so that, as customer preferences have changed, how do we support them the best way along that journey? So the other thing I want to touch on is kind of from an agent perspective. So we talked a little bit about customers, but really agents felt a tremendous impact in being forced to work in a remote setting. And in a lot of cases, businesses maybe weren't, it's at least initially set up to handle this, right? They might not have had the proper coaching tools or video in place to be able to engage with agents in these kind of remote settings. So all of a sudden, an agent that already has a little bit of a difficult role to begin with was kind of forced to this rogue island to, handle some very difficult challenges in terms of interacting with customers. So while, 2 years into this, we're really, I think, understanding in a much stronger way how to empower and kind of engage those remote workers. And I'll definitely touch on more on this in a little bit. But I think it was kind of a shock and awe factor, at least initially, of, we've got these agents at home. They are feeling extremely lonely. Attrition rates are already high. Now we're seeing even higher attrition. And then on top of that, as call volumes and contact volumes increased, all of a sudden you didn't have enough staff to handle that workload. So a lot of challenges around really supporting that front line.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, we've all become much more comfortable with this technology. We're just used to it, and that has two impacts. Many more than two, but two specific ones that I'm thinking about. One is that familiarity, it doesn't breed contempt in this situation, but it teaches us what our preferences are, right? We didn't even know what we liked or didn't like about interacting over some of these channels. Now, as both customers and as agents, we have a much clearer idea of what we think we need and what we think we want from these tools. So I think that that's a real, a major change, and certainly something that has to help solution providers like yourselves, to think about what is it that people actually want and need from these tools. Jessica, I'm going to stay with you for the moment. We're going to talk a lot about technology today, obviously, but contact center success has always been, will continue to be driven by the skills and the knowledge and the commitment of the agents that are on the front lines, the folks who had to go home and figure all this stuff out and continue to make sure that customers were as happy as they possibly could be. Our research at ICMI shows that most customer service pros love their jobs, but the turnover rate in contact centers indicates they're quickly burning out, or they're getting frustrated, or perhaps they just got more options than they had previously. What are you talking to your customers about, what their contact center leadership can do, or what they can do better to find and nurture and keep great talent?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's one that I think deserves a little bit of time to be spent on, because I often say I think that one of the most difficult roles in the contact center, actually within the organization at large, is the role of an agent, right? You're dealing in many cases with very frustrated customers. They're calling in due to, some kind of issue, perhaps a frustration with the business, and that human is on the receiving end of all that frustration. And that can be very overwhelming and taxing on a day-to-day basis, which of course then leads to high attrition, which of course can lead to higher costs, as it's very costly to hire and retrain agents. So, contact center leaders and supervisors, I think, are certainly recognizing the importance of the agent and nurturing that role, and really trying to make sure that they are engaged and empowered in that role. I tossed those words out a moment ago, and I know that they've become a little bit of kind of buzzwords in the contact center, but they're really important. And I think when they're taken with the utmost care, in using maybe some of the tools and technology that's out there, and really working on team building, I think you can do a lot with the agents. So I want to talk about a couple different things, and really the first is, when it comes to training and coaching in the contact center, this really needs to be considered with a very targeted approach in mind. It's one thing to kind of offer your agents sort of blanket training or high-level training when maybe they first start a role, but that kind of ongoing training that is very specific to maybe their day-to-day, or instances where you do recognize where they can kind of make certain improvements, or you want to reflect back with them, that's becoming increasingly important. Additionally, this idea around collaborative team sessions, whether that be in a video environment or some type of collaboration with your other teams, so that an agent knows, I'm not just an agent on this rogue island operating by myself. There's a whole lot of other people that are also experiencing the same types of interactions or frustrations that I may be as well, and there's also opportunity for learnings there. The next thing I would say is gamification can be a phenomenal tool in terms of helping to motivate teams, helping to increase a healthy competitive spirit, showing your agents where you may be, kind of from a team leaderboard, potentially adding some play to a role that, again, can oftentimes be a little overwhelming. And then really one of the other things I would say, just in terms of tools, is an agent can oftentimes be very overwhelmed with all of the desktop tools that they're having to manage. It actually wasn't too long ago, and I want to say it might have even been some ICMI research talking about, on average, an agent might be toggling between 7 and 13 different applications. So providing an agent the type of interface that is not only simple, but relatively intuitive, that gives them all of the information that they need to kind of handle their day-to-day, interact with customers, that is really, really key. You don't want the tool to be something that's also causing agent frustration. And then the last thing I would say, and I swear I'll let my peers chat here, but I think it's becoming increasingly important to show your agents how their role is actually impacting the business at large. And I can't stress this enough, right? Sometimes I think we look at managing agents in terms of numbers. However, that is very much a person there. And the more that you can help connect them to the larger goals of the organization, let them know how their role might be able to move the needle, giving them more of a sense of purpose, that's really going to help engagement in the long run.
Yeah, no, that's great. And we've done some research here, I mentioned earlier, and it really talks about how agents, all of us, are looking for something that's real time, that's focused on our specific needs, that's personalized. And I think that goes to, the dashboard issues that you were talking about. One of the things that I've seen out there is, there's all these dashboards. What are they actually being used for? Some of them are really focused on executives and leadership. Some of them are focused on day-to-day, minute by minute, what do I need to do to satisfy the customer? And I'm not sure in every case that, contact center leadership is thinking through which dashboards we present to whom and what are we actually trying to accomplish with them. David, I know that you cover a lot of this stuff. Omdius looks at the future of work in a lot of ways, and this is certainly one of those topics. What are contact centers doing, and what can they do better to nurture talent and keep it around?
Well, Jessica had such a thorough response. It's hard for me to build off of that, but I'll try. She said a lot of the things that I would have said, so I'm not gonna repeat those. But I think one thing that is important to consider is that we should be as empathetic as we possibly can be toward agents. We put a lot of pressure on agents to perform and be empathetic toward customers, but we also have to remember that agents endure a lot of abuse from customers. They have to put up with some really angry and sometimes mean customers, and this really isn't nothing. This really is nothing new. Excuse me, but what is new for work from home agents is that the abuse is now happening in their homes. A place that should make them feel safe, secure, and comfortable. Because of this, it can be harder to separate negative workplace feelings from their home lives. And as a result, agents might be more inclined to quit, to separate themselves from that. Because of this, managers should try to set up or step up their level of empathy toward agents in ways that the agents can recognize. So praise them, recognize them for their achievements. Even consider implementing a floating break at the manager's discretion if an agent is experiencing or has experienced a very difficult call. With real-time analysis, managers today can detect when a call is going south, and they can jump in to remedy the situation. But managers should also consider how the interaction might have negatively affected the agent and offer the agent a short break to cool off. It conveys to the agent that the manager cares about his or her well-being, and I think that's an important consideration. It'll help boost employee morale. I also think that giving agents a little more of a career path might help, and I think we're at a point where the path that they have now might be improved upon by what Omdia is seeing with the development of what we're calling super agents. We believe that the development of emerging interaction channels and artificial intelligence and customer support will require more highly skilled agents, or, as I mentioned, super agents who are empathetic, empowered to help, good at personal interactions on multiple channels, and can quickly switch channels if they need to. Having these abilities could put the agents in a position to advance and get more and better advancement opportunities. If this super agent, if you look at the super agent as more of a senior level agent, now you've got another stepping stone or ladder on that career rung being, an agent, and then becoming a super agent or a senior agent who has these necessary skills. Not only that, but it also would offer them, we're also suggesting that these super agents would command a better salary, which obviously would certainly help, and it would make their work more interesting and challenging, and also rewarding.
Yeah, I think that's critical. And the other side of that is automation, right? Automation, ideally, is going to take away a lot of the grunt work. Well, that's where a lot of agents learn, by doing the grunt work. So, we have to keep an eye on that as well and think about, well, as you said, what is the career path? We've done some research, and we actually just launched our State of the Contact Center survey. Anybody who's listening, please find that and participate in it. It helps us immensely. But one of the findings that we've seen in previous years is just the attrition rates and how they vary depending on where people are in their career. Well, if you've only hung around for 2 years as a junior agent, you're never going to get to that point where people are sticking around for 5, 6, 7 years because they're actually doing very interesting work. And something else that you said, David, really stuck out at me. We think about sentiment analysis as a customer-facing discipline, if you will, and I think it's really important that we start to think about that also in terms of how we pay attention to, measure, and react to what agents are experiencing in their daily activity. Patrick, obviously this is a topic near and dear to your heart. You've spent much of your career looking at, how can we improve workforce engagement? How do we use tech to do that? What are your thoughts about, what can be done a little bit better for contact center agents?
Yeah, I mean, I'll give a quick 3 things. One of them I'm actually drawing on from Brenda Pratt's question that she posted. It's more of a comment in the questions, but I think at times we as an industry need to put more focus on the effectiveness of our management, of our supervisors, of our coaches, and I feel that in many cases we need to be evaluating the effectiveness of the guidance and coaching they're giving, and seeing if that is leading to or contributing to parts of attrition. Because in a lot of cases, I don't think coaches are monitored at all on the effectiveness. Like, is your coaching actually getting the results that it's intended to? So that's one. The 2 is really focused around empowerment. Empowerment, to me, in terms of improving retention and so forth, it comes in 3 forms. Empowering the agent to work from anywhere. Empowering the agent to have more control over their time, more schedule flexibility, running late, need to leave early, got a sick kid, got a parent-teacher conference, whatever it is. These should not be things that are penalized, and they shouldn't be pulled from their PTO banks either. I think that's the second one. And the third point around empowerment is really control over day of time. So, not just looking at breaks and lunches, but should there be a third mystery bucket of time where the agents can take kind of unscheduled breaks, take a breather, take a moment. Sometimes it can be overwhelming and so forth. So I think that's another one. And then the third point overall that I would make on this is that we as an industry need to work to reduce the cognitive load on these agents. And that comes in many forms. It's getting tech that is helping to reduce that cognitive load. It's also making sure that we don't overly put too much pressure on these frontline workers. It is a hard job. I've done it. It's not as rewarding as a lot of the more managerial type jobs, but it's very difficult. Cognitive load is real, and it is very high in most scenarios. And then the last point of this, like reducing cognitive load, is that I think we as an industry need to continue to push from voice to digital, reducing the amount of real-time thinking and action that we have to take, having a little bit of asynchronous in there, like in a chat or an SMS. I think that helps take some of the pressure off of the agents, which will, of course, help with retention.
Yeah, those are all very, very important points. But one of the things that occurs to me as you were talking about adding flexibility, flexibility across all aspects of an agent's day, is that also requires tools, management tools, that can take all of that into account and efficiently balance all of those now much more variable types of experiences across an entire agent pool, for example. But yeah, the cognitive load thing, I remember reading once about real-time translators who work at, for example, at the UN, and how their heads physically get really, really hot because they're constantly operating in language, right? They're in spoken language, and it's an extremely high load on a human brain. So these are definitely things that need to be taken into account and thought about as leadership is thinking about the tools that they're going to need down the road. What they have now, what can be optimized, but I think more importantly, like what to ask folks like 8x8 for as they're working to move into the next phase of the contact center evolution. Patrick, I'm going to stick with you. Another impact of high agent turn is the loss of what you might call tribal knowledge. This is, I think, more of an issue perhaps with the tech support industry, which is in a lot of ways very, very similar to contact center. But I think there's more of a knowledge management function that most agents or tech support agents are required to do versus contact center. Nonetheless, to continue to serve your customer base effectively, you need to know what's already been figured out. What do I not have to waste time on trying to find a senior person who can answer or help me answer some of these questions? And then, as people do gain that knowledge and they leave because the churn in this industry is very high, a lot of that knowledge can walk out the door with them, right? So how do we retain that stuff? How do we make sure that contact centers have the processes and technology in place to address knowledge capture and then knowledge sharing?
Yeah, I mean, I would, focus on three things specifically. The first one is having a knowledge base, which I know not every operation does. And a knowledge base can be as basic as Excel. I wouldn't advocate for that as the process, but that is better than nothing. And then the second part of that same thing is knowledge base hygiene. So making sure that it's monitored, updated, added to forever and all the time. So that's one of the three things. The second one is that there are all kinds of tech that can help with this. One of the emerging products out of a lot of CCaaS providers and some standalone vendors is the Agent Assist, which was mentioned earlier. That's providing real-time guidance for the agents. So, if the agent is less skilled, less trained, less knowledgeable, some of that can be combated with an Agent Assist type product. Won't solve all of it. But you'll also need a good knowledge base for that to be effective. And then the third point I would bring up is that operations need to build processes that enable the frontline worker, the agent, to get help quickly and easily from all parts of the business. Front office, back office, top office, whatever, however you want to think of it. If they have a marketing related question, they need to be able to get to marketing people. If they have some other specialty group needs, they need to be able to get access to them. And what I see is that it can be solved through tech, but that you need the right tech partners, because a lot of them don't enable that action. You need a tech partner that has access to all business users and controls, or at least is part of the agent communication interface.
Yeah, no, I think that's critical, and it's fascinating what we're starting to see in terms of that real-time guidance, where we've got tools now that can listen along and understand what the agent is going to need and provide that to them, whether that's an actual answer or guidance as to who or where they can find the answers that they need, and also to see the patterns, right? To start to understand this is something that's coming up over and over again. We need to make sure that all of our agents are equipped with the knowledge that they need, and this is how they're going to learn, because they're not going to learn by sitting next to each other anymore, right? They're not going to have their senior person right down the hall. So these kinds of tools, I think, are absolutely critical for continuing to train and enable agents for whatever is going to be next in their careers. David, what knowledge management practice changes are you seeing in contact centers at this point?
Yeah, I think Patrick hit on a few key ones. So I'm not going to belabor those points. I think obviously setting up a knowledge base is important. Regularly update it is important, and then a content audit. Regular content audits are important. I would also say that, or add that, see which technologies that you can deploy that effectively leverage the use of knowledge bases. I'll talk a little bit about this later, but a lot of companies are investing in chatbot technologies that can do that. Keep in mind though that especially with chatbots and self-service, knowledge bases have their limitations. If customers want personal account information, the chatbot will have to connect to the customer record. We actually found that organizations that do this, that connect to the customer record, notice a significant decrease in customer escalations to a live agent or the phone.
Yeah, that's there's a lot to kind of unpack there, right? For sure. Jessica, what are your thoughts on sort of knowledge management and its place and its increasing importance, I would say, in the contact center?
For sure. I was actually just having a conversation recently with someone who manages the contact center. This is a smaller growing startup, so I realized this use case might not be for everyone, but he was basically talking about, the rate that they're growing right now and how much they are learning from their customers across the board. They're really putting some of the onus back on the agents to document some of their learning, some of their findings. And that is then kind of collected and fed into truly a knowledge base that they've simply kind of built internally. But if we tie this even back to talking about agent engagement just a moment ago, I think a lot of those agents are feeling a sense of purpose and engagement, even beyond just that one particular customer interaction, knowing that what they've just learned from that particular interaction is going to potentially help one of their teammates or colleagues in the future. And so I think that in certain instances, kind of making agents feel a part of that kind of data collection, and then using that information to kind of strengthen the knowledge base, I think can be really, really critical. And then I just want to elaborate even a little bit more on Patrick's point about Agent Assist, because I do think it's a product that's coming up, more and more. I do think it can offer a ton of value. And what is really critical here is this is something that can really help reducing that cognitive load, right? Agents are thinking about and managing a whole slew of different things. So if and when the system can be smart enough to pick up certain things and then serve up that agent either some type of information that they can then say back to the customer, or perhaps a resource, that's really going to not only help speed up the interaction, the agent's going to feel smarter, and additionally, they're not going to have to spend a lot more time kind of thinking about how they're going to respond to that particular customer.
Yeah, that's great. And I just want to assure our audience that we are seeing the questions that you're putting through, and we're going to try to answer them. Some of them we'll answer in line, but most we'll probably save for the end. But I think, Brenda, you've made a good point here. Most Agent Assist options are one size fits all. Agent Assist needs to be customizable for each team, using tools to include multiple coaches and product metrics on those coaches, or produce metrics on those coaches about the timeliness, number of responses, et cetera. And I think that is very important. One size fits all definitely will not work in terms of Agent Assist, because we are all individually so different, and the way that we work is different. And especially if you have a contact center with a lot of different levels of expertise and experience, that's going to be very, very different too. So Brenda, thank you for that comment rather. Okay, Jessica, everything in the contact center is changing fast, and nothing is changing faster than customer expectations. We talked about this a little bit earlier, expectations about how, where, and when they interact with customer service. Can you talk about some of the changes we're seeing in customer expectations over the recent past, what you see changing going forward, and what are some of the potential impacts of that evolution of customer sentiment, customer expectations, customer requirements and demands in terms of investment decisions, in terms of agent training programs, and how contact centers will be interacting with customers going forward?
Yeah, for sure. I'm going to take a page out of my friend Patrick's book here and stick to 3. And you'll notice some kind of consistent themes with what we've already been talking about today, but I think that they are areas where we're seeing a lot of consumer preferences change, and that is around digital customer service, certainly self-service, and then proactive outreach. And each of these themes, they're definitely very intertwined. However, when it comes to the customer's journey or their experience with each of these, I think that businesses really need to be thinking about these differently, just in terms of how they maybe satisfy some of those expectations. So in terms of digital service, I think we can all agree that, if and when we have a particular issue with a business or a company, we'd like to have that resolved relatively quickly. And if we can do that through a preferred channel, in many cases we're seeing SMS on the rise, or maybe it is web chat, or perhaps it's a messaging service. A lot of times that's very easy for us, as we are maybe mobile or on the go, and so we don't have to pick up the phone, potentially wait on hold, wait for a call back. So definitely an area where preferences are changing, which leads to the next point, which is around self-service. And while self-service can be voice or digital, we're really starting to see that when the tech works well, consumers actually prefer the self-service experience. And the reason I say when the tech works well, I'm certain that we can all share that experience where we've, maybe interacted with an IVR or some type of self-service. We've given the system some information, and then the first thing that agent does when they speak to us is ask us all the same questions. That experience can be infuriating. And so I think for a long time, self-service got this really bad rap, and people were like, I don't want anything to do with that. Just let me talk to a live agent, right? You've heard the experience of people going, just hitting 0 to be able to speak to that person. Whereas now, as some of the, I'm with you, Tim, I'm totally with you. So whereas now we're starting to see the technology become a little bit smarter, right? As conversational AI, NLP, NLU start to become, easy elements to interact with, all of a sudden consumers are saying, wait a minute, that was pretty easy. I had 24/7 access to the company that I just wanted to get a resolution with. I was able to call up, get a status on my order. They sent me an SMS right after about the interaction, and I didn't have to speak to a live person or wait on hold for a long time. So that's kind of self-service and some of the shift there. And then the last thing I would say is this notion of proactive outreach, or this idea that there's going to be a shift from reactive service to proactive service. And the reason I think that this is pretty important is the more that a company can anticipate some of your customers' needs, you're going to see CSAT increase, and you're also going to see a decrease maybe in some of those really expensive channels that are often the reactive channels, right? So very basic use case, but in the event that you've just placed an order and you've still not maybe received either confirmation, or maybe it's taking too long to get delivered, imagine that company, instead of waiting for you to give them a call, talk with an agent, where the heck is this order, instead sent you an SMS to say, we've just recognized that, this order is a little bit delayed. Here's an updated tracking number to let you know, that the status of this. If you'd like to speak to a live person, click here to speak to one now. So those kinds of things are making customers feel really taken care of. The level of personalization that's involved is also critical. So I do think we're going to see a pretty strong increase in proactive customer service.
And that's interesting. I mean, it makes perfect sense, but it's also a pretty tough kind of design challenge. I think about it in this terms. I occasionally get a physical piece of mail that tells me there's a new document on the website. Well, so this is not exactly proactive. It's a long delay. I don't necessarily check my Gmail every single day. So when things are surfaced by, one of 1,000 emails that says, hey, you've got a new document that you want to check out, it's useful, but it's not necessarily, that interactive and real-time kind of experience. And I think that one of the metrics that we all need to be thinking much more about is this idea of customer effort score, right? What is the effort that's required to get the service that I need right now? And I think we also need to, as always, translate that to what is the agent effort score? What is required, as we were talking about, what is the cognitive load that's required just to do your job and get through the day and keep customers happy. Patrick, what can you talk to us about a little bit in terms of how are things changing in terms of customer expectations? How do we get ahead of that? How do we keep a finger on the pulse of that?
Yeah, I actually don't think customer expectations have changed personally. I think that the way that we communicate has changed drastically and will continue to change, but the expectation, in my view, has not changed. The expectation being respect my time as a customer, give me accurate information, follow up proactively where necessary. And if you get those three things right, you'll pretty much always have good or great experiences. But getting those right, knowing the way that the ways we communicate have changed, is becoming trickier. But I think the expectations at the root of it are really unchanged. Respect their time, be accurate, be timely.
I think that's a great point. David, talk to us a little bit about what your research is showing you in terms of. I would agree, Patrick. The expectation at that base level is very much the same. Expectations of how we get there is what's really changing rapidly, right? So, David, what are you hearing from the research you're doing?
Yeah, sure. So, basically, what we're noticing is that as a result of the pandemic, customers, as I mentioned earlier, who were initially forced to isolate who want to stay connected with family and friends and interact with companies, became digital power users and are more comfortable using digital channels. So they expect the companies that they interact with to be as proficient as they are on the many different digital channels that they have come to use and like. One other thing that I would add to that question with regard to changes is that with so many concerns about the economy lately, contact center leaders are wondering how an economic downturn might affect them. The old argument, I think this is where the old argument for the cloud becomes the new argument, right? The cloud offers predictable costs. Companies can get up-to-date solutions at the click of a button. They don't have to hire extra IT staff. And so I believe that with the economic concerns sort of on the horizon, we'll see continued investments in the cloud and automation as well, because contact center managers not only have to worry about their investments, but their staffing. So they'll want to automate as much as they can through things like digital self-service that we talked about, and omni-channel solutions and AI as well. So there's so much happening in the contact center industry just within these areas that I believe these will keep contact center managers busy for quite some time. I also think that as far as how contact centers will train agents moving forward, I'm seeing the deployment of more solutions such as chatbots that can automate routine customer interactions. So agents, as I mentioned, can focus on more complex engagements. This will also help the evolution of what I mentioned earlier of the super agent. We're also seeing more artificial intelligence technologies to help guide agents in real time for some of the things we already talked about, like agent assist, next best action, customer sentiment, and even automated performance and training management, for example. These solutions can alert an agent to an error or a missed opportunity and offer relevant training materials on the spot. So that they can, agents can stay up to speed. Now, what's nice about this is that agents don't have to be told by their managers that they screwed up. It's an automated approach to that, and so I think that also helps with training and keeping morale a little high, so that agents can sort of develop and feel like they're developing on their own.
Yeah, there's so many levers that need to be pulled in a modern contact center to make it all work smoothly, and I think that really points up an opportunity for tool makers, which is decision support for leadership, to help them absorb all of this information and then think about what do we do next, right? So, okay, we're going to pause here for about 30 seconds. I want to thank everybody for continuing the great questions in the Q&A box, and we will get to those as much as we can. But we're going to pause here for about 30 seconds. We're going to ask our audience to weigh in terms of your, excuse me, I'm thing in my throat here, to weigh in with your tech plans for the near future. To participate in this poll, please choose all of the selections that apply to you by clicking directly on the screen and then click submit. And I'm going to pull up our poll questions here in a second as soon as my mouse decides to do what I'm actually asking it to do. I apologize for the delay. Here we go. All right. There we are. So please take a look at this and let us know if you've implemented or plan to implement over the next 2 quarters any of the following technology: virtual assistants in terms of voice technology, chatbots, predictive analytics, agent assist, intelligent routing, or, and I doubt we're going to get too many of these answers, none of the above. So.
Yeah, while we're waiting for the audience to click their answers, what's interesting, we recently took a survey around March called the Digital First Customer Engagement Survey, and we wanted to find out where organizations are implementing various AI technologies in the contact center. And what we found was that 58% have already deployed social listening and ticketing. That was a surprise to us. Caller intent was also up there as well, and chatbot was also in the top 3. So I wouldn't be surprised if chatbot will be high on this list.
Great. Well, I'll tell you what. Let's take a look and see what we've got here. Okay. Oops. So it's coming off my screen. There we go. Thank you. So what do we got? We got virtual assistants, about 10.7% of our audience, chatbots, 35.7%, predictive analytics, 14%, agent assist, 7.1%, so there's a great opportunity, intelligent routing, and unfortunately for some of these folks, none of the above. And I say unfortunately only because you're going to have to figure it out, and the only way to figure a lot of this stuff out and how well it's going to work for your particular operation is to get it in there and get started working with it. But yeah, David, to your point, chatbots are, we've been talking about them for a long time, and it looks like they're really coming in. Bottom line, it's more and more important for contact center leadership and their teams to understand what these technologies can do, what's coming down the road, and how to use these many of them AI-powered tools to improve the customer experience. And that, surprisingly, gives me a perfect segue into our next question for our panel. We're going to address the robotic elephant in the room. After years of talking about how the applications for artificial intelligence contact center, we're coming. AI is starting to make real inroads. We can see that in our poll results. We're certainly seeing it in other research that we're doing, but there's certainly a ways to go. David, what does Omdia's research tell us about where AI is being applied today? You talked about some of that, but where do you see it going, and how do you think it will really change how agents do their jobs?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I did talk about some of I think I mentioned the top 3 areas that organizations are deploying AI in the contact center. So we're also seeing, if I wanted to round it out a little bit, and add the 4th and 5th, call and speech analytics for quality monitoring, customer satisfaction, and trading came in at 46% in the number 4 spot. And then 45% stated that they have already deployed digital interaction analytics for quality monitoring, customer satisfaction, and training. Now, some of them, what's also interesting is that over the next 18 months, 90% or more will have implemented or will plan to implement AI-powered social listening and ticketing solutions, chatbots, agent assist, and intelligent call routing. So over the next 18 months, those are going to be the areas that organizations plan to invest AI, plan to use or deploy AI in the contact center. So what's also interesting with this survey is that we also asked, where is AI showing the most value for the customer experience? And according to Omdia's research, 88% stated social listening and ticketing added significant value. 71% stated digital customer contact analytics for quality management, customer satisfaction, and training also added significant value. 64% said intelligent call routing added significant value, followed by 63% of claim that call and speech analytics for QM, customer sat, and training And then finally, intelligent knowledge base. 60% said that intelligent knowledge base added significant value.
Great. Yeah. A good list for contact center leadership to be looking at, and a good list for contact center practitioners to be thinking about in terms of what what those will mean for their jobs. We're getting a little bit tight on time here, so I apologize in advance to the audience. I don't think we're going to get to a whole lot of Q&A, if any, but we will do our best to respond to this stuff offline. So don't hesitate to keep asking those questions. Jessica, what are you seeing in terms of where AI is and where it's going to be sort of in the near future as you're working with 8x8's clients?
Yeah, I'll keep this relatively brief because we could talk about the applications of AI all day long. Yeah. I think that the thing that I would want to potentially impress upon here is oftentimes in the contact center, we're not thinking about AI in the best way. And what I mean by that is, we've heard of a lot of leaders sometimes saying, okay, I've got to figure out how to bring more automation and I need to increase efficiency, and AI is the best way to do that. And I agree with that. However, I think in order to really understand maybe the real value that AI can bring, maybe shift that perspective just a little bit. And when you are considering a provider, really be looking at a provider who is thinking about AI in terms of infusing aspects of AI throughout the platform. And then looking at AI as far as having many different inputs. The more inputs that your AI has, the stronger, the more intelligent it can be. And so you don't want to be thinking about maybe just different point solutions that have components of artificial intelligence. You really wanted to be thinking about how this can impact your solution at large and really from kind of a full suite standpoint. Like I said, I'll be brief.
Yeah, no, I think that's critical, and it's tough. This is very complex technology, so understanding where to apply it first, where to apply it next, where to apply it maybe not at all, is a tough job. And I think that's part of the job of folks like 8x8, like David, like ourselves, to help contact center pros understand this stuff. Patrick, I'm going to kind of combine things and let you provide your AI answer as part of our final wrap up. That no worries. You can still answer the question, but I just want you to talk about the really fun stuff, right? So you're looking out towards the end of this decade and beyond. What do you predict are some of the coolest changes contact center pros will be dealing with? And let's let you lead off with sort of where is AI now, and then that'll give you a nice ramp on the cool stuff.
It works that these answers work together. I think that the coolest stuff and the stuff that we'll be talking about and working with and adopting by about 2030 or so will be heavily focused around self-service and automation being the lead with for every kind of customer communication, then followed with some sort of human touch point where necessary or when necessary. And that human touch point from the agent perspective will have very effective, very useful real-time guidance to help them. So I think that we'll be cutting it at both ends and really shrinking the volume of interactions that require human touch and shrinking the parts of the interaction that require human touch. I think the beginning and the end of the interactions are easy to be consumed and automated away, but that middle part of actually doing the thing that they're calling about is where I think humans will still own the majority of that work, but with a very good guide or assistant sitting right next to them virtually.
Great. So we're at about 2 minutes. I know I didn't get a chance to ask David and Jessica this cool final question. David, I'm going to ask you for bullet points. Just what is the cool stuff that we ought to be looking for?
Yeah, just real fast. We're tracking hosted usage. We're expecting hosted to flip on-prem in the next few years. I'm starting to see interesting things develop with augmented reality in the contact center, and I'm also kind of excited to see if we'll have metaverse customer engagements. I kind of feel like that would be really cool, sort of maybe end of the decade type stuff. Imagine being able to call a hotel company and using VR goggles, see what it's like to sit by their pool and get a view of the ocean view as you're sitting by the pool, or maybe check out their rooms or check out other amenities. Another area that might be relevant would be construction. You can check to see what the blueprints actually look like if you do a remodel on your house or build a new house. So you get to actually with VR go in and see it. So I think those might be some really cool applications moving forward.
Great, thank you. And Jessica, I purposely put you at the end here to let you wrap us up, and I really apologize that you're going to have to speak very quickly now. What do you see as cool?
Totally fine. And David, you kind of took the thought right out of my mouth, because I do think that there's an application for the metaverse here and in customer experience. I'll put a different spin on it lightly, which is I think remote and hybrid work really is here to stay. And I think that as we continue to operate in these kinds of environments, the metaverse all of a sudden becomes very attractive, both for the customer as well as the agent, to meet and have a somewhat of a live interaction, but in a safe space like the metaverse. Maybe you're picking avatars, you're picking your meeting room, and it just kind of enhances the interaction for the agent and the customer as well. And with that, I realize we're right at time, so Tim, I'll pass it back to you for closing.
Okay, thank you all so much. Fascinating conversation, really, really enjoyable. I look forward to continuing it down the road. That's all we have time for today, so thank you to everyone in the audience who joined us. We will try to answer your questions offline. Thank you, very, very huge thank you to David, to Patrick, and to Jessica. And thanks again to 8x8 for sponsoring today's session. As a reminder, you will receive a follow-up email that's going to include a link to view the recording of today's presentation. So if you did find it useful, please share that with your colleagues. And once you leave the event, a short survey is going to pop up. We appreciate if you share your feedback. It helps us tailor these programs to your interests. Thank you all, and have a great day.